everyone, it's Alice, and today we're gonna talk about the books I read in June. First up, we've got a book that I finally got around to reading after having had it for ages. And it's been one of those books that I never felt any rush to get to because I just knew I was gonna like it, but I did finally read it. It was Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This is like a fiction novel with a very slight mystery element, and the story follows this family in a small town in Ohio in the 70s, and what happens is that the eldest daughter of the family dies and leaves everyone reeling. And we sort of follow them in their grief, but we also take a look back to the time before the daughter died and sort of explore what led up to that moment. Honestly, Celeste Ng and her writing, like, my god, it's so freaking good. Like, the way she writes characters in a way where you really feel like you get to know them and you really get inside their heads, and you end up having this great understanding of what kind of people they're like. It's just so good, and it was definitely my favorite part of this book, and it's one of the reasons that I knew I was gonna like this book, because I just know Celeste Ng's writing is freaking amazing. This is the kind of book where I would definitely say it's more character driven than plot driven. And although there are things happening in the book and the mystery element is sort of, it's trying to figure out what really happened to the daughter, the story is very much about these characters and this family and all of the dynamics within the family, and also this overwhelming grief that comes after the daughter dies. And we get to see how the different characters react to that grief, which I thought was done very, very well. It felt very realistic how differently everyone reacted to that situation. There's also the theme of parents living through their children in this book, which I thought was very interesting, and I loved exploring that. You sort of get to see that situation from both sides, and it's heartbreaking, but you also understand the people in that dynamic and why it happens the way that it does. And then you get to see this child become a teenager and sort of starts rebelling a little bit, and I thought that was very, very interesting as well. Like, I don't know if I've ever read a book that deals with that, but this, I felt, dealt with it very well. It was heartbreaking, but it was very interesting. I also really like how, like, Celeste Ng is so good at capturing these, like, dynamics and different kinds of relationships, and the way that she captures families is just so good. And I like how there's a lot of secrets in this book, and there are different kinds of secrets. There are secrets that are kept in the family from the outside world, but then there are also secrets kept between family members, and I really, really like that. I also think that the small town is captured really well. There is, like, this is an Asian American family living in a small town in the 70s, and that comes with certain kinds of reactions from other people and situations, which I really liked. And I think it was just such a good book. It was just a really, really good book. It was just a very solid, good read though, and I would really recommend it if you like these kinds of stories and stories with these kinds of themes, because Celeste Ng's writing is just so good that if you like these kinds of stories, you're gonna like her books, I think. I gave this a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. I'm definitely gonna keep this and probably reread it at some point. And now that I've read this, which, not gonna lie, may have been one of the reasons that I picked this up now, I can now go get Celeste Ng's newest book, which appears to be a little bit of a different kind of read. I wonder if it has some sort of like dystopian underline, which is interesting. And I'm definitely gonna go get it, and then probably keep it on my shelves for like a couple of years because I know I'm gonna like it, and I just never feel the rush to get to it. So yeah, definitely gonna get her newest book. Would definitely recommend this. And also Little Fires Everywhere, if you haven't read it. Secondly, I dove into a romance book because I just wanted to try some, so I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is contemporary fiction romance, and it tells the story of this romance writer who has lost faith in love, and this literary writer who is kind of like stuck in a rut. And the romance writer moves to this lake house for a summer, and they come across each other. and they sort of make a deal to spend the summer writing each other's genres to sort of get out of what they're stuck in a way. This might be surprising to you, or maybe not, but it's surprising to me how well I got on with this book. I read this so quickly and I couldn't get enough of it. Like, I just fell into this book and I had a great time reading it. Now, I've sort of avoided the romance genre for a really long time because I live in fear of the cringe. But I feel like this was a good way in for me, and I think one of the reasons that I like this so much is that there is more going on in it than just a romance. We explore grief in here, there's a lot of talk about books and literature and writing, and I think having that as well, and that adding a little bit more substance to the book really helped me, because there was more going on than just this, like, these two people and their romantic trajectory. That being said, I did actually really like the romantic bits. I like the characters, which I think helps a lot, and I like their banter and their dynamic. I like the whole setup of the story, and that I really enjoyed the building tension throughout the book. I also really appreciate how, especially the main character is written, and how she is having this crisis in her life. And it's very clear that she's struggling because she is a mess. And I really like that that's actually shown to us, and you can really tell, not in just how she thinks, but how she acts, that she is having a little bit of a crisis. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually ended up liking this so much that I went out and got another 2 books by Emily Henry, which I think I'm gonna try to read over the summer months, because I just had a great time with this book, and I read it so quickly, and it was really good in the way that, like, I read a lot of cozy mysteries, and I sort of use them when I need something lighter and something that's almost like a palate cleanser in a way. And I feel like these books could be like that for me as well. Like, when I need something lighter and not as serious in between, like, the dark and depressing books that I read sometimes, which I love, but just not all the time. Then I read what can only be described as a romp. It was The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. And this is historical fiction, fantasy, romance, but the fantasy is like, it's basically just magic, and it's not set in a magical land or like a fantasy land or anything. It's set in Victorian London, actually. And we follow this young woman who is a lady thief, and she lives with her aunt in a house that they fly around in. So that's part of the magic bit of this. And at the beginning of the story, basically an assassin is sent after her. And when that happens, we go on basically a pirate adventure. This is the kind of book where if you read the first 30 pages and you're not into it, you're not gonna like it. But if you read the first 30 pages and you're into it, you are gonna love this book and you're gonna have a great time. This was so much fun. This is one of those books that I would endearingly call ridiculous, meaning that a lot of things in this book is like super over the top, but for me it really works. I was really impressed by the writing in this, actually. I think this is one of the better written ridiculous books that I've read, and I mean, it manages to pull off what is basically a secret society of lady thieves slash pirates, and you actually have characters that you get really invested in and that you're really interested in getting to know. I also love how Victorian society is shown in here. I think Victorian times were really interesting in the way that there were like proper ways of doing things and kind of really strict rules, and this has that, but it spins it in a really humorous way where there's like a difference between a pirate and a gentleman pirate, and there's like a specific way of going about robbing someone to be polite. You know what I mean? And although these like women and these scoundrels are causing mayhem and wreaking havoc, there is a proper way of doing that as well, and it's very important that everyone like follows all of these rules. I just loved all of that. It was just so much fun. And there is romance in this book. There's like a romantic thing going on, and there's a little bit of like steamy scenes. But to me, that really felt like more of a side plot. And the main part of the story is about the main character trying to find her way in life. And I really like that towards the end, the decisions that she makes in when it comes to like the romantic stuff as well is very much about what she wants. And so the story is very much about her and what she wants in life, which I really like. I also, by the way, love the humor around having this lady society come together, and they like mention how useless men are and how like they can't do anything right and they're just in the way. And I just thought that was funny to sort of flip that on its head, because historically that's not what people have thought, and arguably some people still think that it's the other way around. This was, again, a really solid 4 out of 5 star read, and I have the second book on my shelves waiting for me, which I think is set in the same world, but it follows different characters. I think there are witches in that book, which I'm very interested in, and I'm really looking forward to reading it, and I'm glad that I have it, and I can like, when I'm in the mood for this kind of book, I just know I have it there waiting for me. There is also a third book in the series, which I will definitely also be getting, because these books are just, it's just so much fun. Lastly, I read even more romance. I read The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood, and this is contemporary romance, and we have a main character who is a PhD candidate who basically ends up in a fake dating scenario with a professor at the university in order to give her best friend the opportunity to date who she wants to date. That is kind of an oversimplification of the plot, but whatever. I got this book because I was on the romance train, and I went and got this because I wanted to try a romance that had some different tropes to it than the other 2 books that I read. So I picked this up and I enjoyed it, but I had more problems with this than I did with the other 2 books. The main thing that I struggled with in here is that I feel like the basis for the plot, like the whole setup of the fake dating, is very, very thin. And there's something kind of annoying about having characters that you're told are really smart, making really dumb decisions, and not getting out of it either. So the whole setup was a little bit difficult for me to get over and sort of get into. And then I also think that for me it's a little bit difficult to understand how our main character has this best friend in the entire world. Like, their relationship is really special and they're really, really close. It's hard for me to understand why these people couldn't just talk to each other and why she couldn't just explain the situation, because if you're that close and you're that, like, your friendship is that strong and you're like best friends in the entire world, I don't understand why you couldn't just talk to each other. And she sort of, like, the main character explains why she thinks it wouldn't work, but I'm also like, you're adults. You could just talk to each other and figure this out. I also think that the characters are not that well developed, which I think is a shame. Our main character, like, there is very little setup in this book. Like, the start of the fake dating starts in like the first bit. It happens very, very quickly, and we have no setup of the characters before that. And I think that we're told a lot of things about the main character, but I couldn't really see it. Like, we're told that she's really smart and she's really beautiful, and the only reason we know she's smart is because she's a PhD candidate, but it doesn't really show in a lot of other areas of her life. And like, I couldn't really picture her, if you know what I mean, and I don't know if I really felt like I got to know her. I also think that the guy character is a little bit the same. It makes more sense with him because he's like a little bit more mysterious, but we don't really get to know him that well either, except we do know what he looks like, because the book will tell you every other page that he is broad and tall and handsome and muscular, and you can't get away from it. All of this being said though, I have to give the book some credit because I did get roped in to most of this towards the end. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. and I did really enjoy it, and I wanted to know what happened to the characters towards the end. And I think that there are a lot of tension-filled scenes that are really good. There is also some steam in here as well, which initially when I read it, I thought it was okay. In hindsight, I wonder if there are some like problematic things with it, but I don't know how much to like think about that, because at least the characters had a great time. I am really glad that I read this though, and I'm fully aware that in my exploration of the romance genre, which I will probably be reading a lot of these books, because like I've figured out that when it's good, I do really like it. In my quest to find these kinds of like romance books that I like, I know that I'm gonna have to read some books that there are things that I like and things that I don't, and I'm probably gonna read some books that I really dislike, but I have to explore different things and different tropes to find out what I like. And I feel like this book taught me that I like some things, and then there are some things that I don't like as much, and then there are some things I think just didn't work for me in this book, but could work for me in other books. I did really enjoy this though, and I did read it very quickly, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Those were all the books that I finished in June, but I will say I had a really good reading month and I read loads, and I did actually start this book, The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, and I'm about halfway through. And this book is like 700 pages, so it sort of feels like I've actually read another book this month, but I am loving this. I usually get really intimidated when books are on the longer side, but I can't get enough of this book, and the fact that it's 700 pages doesn't bother me at all. I almost feel like it's not going to be enough because I'm so invested in this and I love it. But yeah, I've been reading loads and I'm really happy with that because I've actually had such a busy time at work this month. I had this huge project that took up all of my brain space, so I'm surprised that I've read anything at all, but I've read some really good books this month, so maybe I just picked the right ones. And again, these romance books I flew through because they're just on the lighter side and they're just super enjoyable and easy to read and doesn't require that much brain capacity. So I'm really happy with that, and I'm loving reading lately, which is great because it's my favorite thing. Anyways, I'd love to know what you all have been reading lately and how your summer reading is going so far. Tell me all about it in the comments. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!